Okay, thank you for staying with us. The next program is the panel discussion. So let's invite the morning speakers, Professor Jody FORLIZZI, Dr. Ted Selker, and VP Sanyong Choi from LGE. Because Professor Jody mentioned she has to leave for in the next 20 minutes, so we bring up the questions to Jody first. And here's a question for Professor Jody and the whole panel as well. So AI can be an extremely powerful tool for designers, but also a very dangerous weapon. How to teach students about ethical implications and ethical use of AI?
Thank you. My thoughts about this are, it's not easy. I think that generally when we teach designers how to design things, we need to ask them to think about their solutions put forth in the world and think about what Tony Goldsby-Smith called the solution after next. And in AI, when it's regarding products and services with AI, I think we need to think about the failure case. We need to think about all the instantiations of what might be, and that's often really hard for designers to think about. So as design educators, we've tried to develop tools to help designers envision what AI might do when they're designing. However, I think a lot more is needed.
Ted, what do you think?
Yeah, so all tools are dangerous. The idea of a tool is something that allows you to do something bigger and more than you could without it. You can hit your hand with a hammer. So when we take those dramatic visualizations on the screen in Choi's beautiful cockpits, if those things are moving while you're driving, your attention is attracted to them. So that's that. The ethics of that are also complicated, and Mr. Choi was very, very articulate explaining that. So I think that the question of AI often in most people's thoughts has to do more with data and privacy and security often. And I think that has always been a problem. And without AI, we still are accumulating so much data about people, and surveillance issues are dramatic too. And so we really, of course, want to think of implications and unintended implications in every design effort we do. Now, quite frankly, I'm going to go back to my theme, which is you think you understand how things implications and unintended implications are going to go, but you just watch in Twitter and Facebook and all of these other places where the designers are shocked. I tell you, shocked at what the implications actually ended up being and what they continue to evolve to be. Because every tool you give people, they also think of ways of using it that you didn't think of. And when they do, that changes the ethical consequences as well.
Absolutely. But you mentioned we consider AI as a tool. However, I think there's quite fundamental differences between the tools we have experienced before in our humanity and compared to AI, because AI is kind of intelligence. It's not really like extending our physical body, to help us do things, to make things become more efficient. But instead, AI is going to help us make decisions. So, it's a sharing kind of a part of a brain functionality. So in this case, that's why I think its ethical issue has become more significant than before. So what do you think about this in the vehicle design industry, VP Choi? Because more and more we are moving to autonomous driving vehicles, right? And there's a couple of questions regarding to the ethical issue, responsibility issues. If something happens, who's gonna need to be responsible for this? So from the vehicle design perspective, is there any consideration regarding to this topic?
Yeah. So the very popular topic of autonomous vehicle. I think that it's basically we need discretion. How to may have that discretion standard is very important. But At this moment, just because it's capable, because it's very good at what it does, doing repetitive tasks and make quick decisions, we tend to kind of expect it to be making a good decisions, having autonomous results. But in reality, at least from my perspective, there are still ways to go. Some OEMs in announcing their autonomous vehicle capability are more liberal than the others, and each company has a different criteria. Some are very, for example, in Nissan, where I used to work, the case was where they had to have a perfect, in designing an EV, the range of the distance of the vehicle, it needed a certain size. Well, a daily drive would be this X number of miles, and to go there, the battery has to be about this size, and the vehicle should be about this size. It was very logical standard to do it. In case of a Tesla, the range is much more longer, but not because it was, well, of course they had their unique technology as well, but they decided to have, say basically that the Tesla S is going to be a luxury car. They're going to be a much more performance car, not a lean, kind of well-balanced car Nissan wanted to build, but I wanted an American sports premium car. So that standard was different. That's why one was 80 miles range, or the other one was 250 miles range in the beginning. That type of a discretion is always necessary, and designers need to be able to, and designers and engineers obviously will have to have a certain type of a criteria for making those decisions. Yeah, so I think having relying on AI is sort of like I would consider AI as another personality, like an acquaintance of mine. I don't trust. I'd like to, but I don't trust everybody 100%. But there is some level of trust that I have in knowing their track history, their ethics, and their whatnot, their pattern of behavior. I think that we should approach AI in kind of the same way, like another person. It does this well, that well, but I can't say that we would trust that 100% and wholeheartedly all the time. But definitely value that relationship. I think that's very important.
That's very interesting when you say we should, treat AI as another person. From the technology perspective, I totally agree. That's the future we're heading up to. But it's, for example, I think I want to map out a scenario for everyone, just to build up the conversation. For example, this morning when I prepared to leave home for work, I ask my AI virtual assistant, I say, "Hi, dummy me," just instead of Siri. Siri is a chatbot. Maybe in the language recognition perspective is machine learning, but it's a chatbot. But my virtual assistant, dummy me, is a real deal. It's let's imagine it's a real AI. Okay, so I asked him, I said, "Hi, dummy me, can you tell me which tie I should wear? Because I will be the moderator for a very important session this morning." So, and then dummy me started to search for my interest, maybe through my internet surfing records. I said maybe because I actually don't know, how AI gather all my data and to understand user. If AI doesn't understand you, how can they make decision for you? So in any case, it has to understand you. And search my internet records and also analyze my character, maybe through monitoring my calls. Ooh, scary. WhatsApp or WeChat conversation record, and to get a conclusion about also compared to the fashion code of this event, etc. Then it can make the decision for me. So now here, as you mentioned, the question here is, what is the level of transparency of information we should have here between human with AI? If you don't know, because you trust your friend, for example, because you know how your friend think, you have communicating with your friend maybe from childhood, there is transparency through your experience with your friend. But the AI is just a new thing, came up into your home. Dummy me came my home last week. How can you trust this character? In case, for example, if there's one parameter is missing, in driving assistance in this virtual assistant. That gonna cause a serious misjudgment. How can we ensure, if there's a lack of transparency of this communication decision making, how can we ensure all the parameters will be considered in this? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's a kind of a difficult. I don't think there's a good answer for that. I mean, like if there's the trust it needs to build with over time. I think it's not something just at one point. Okay, you can trust this 100%. It's more of the track record, isn't it? Being able to see for us to see it's the AI's the trend for us to recognize. So it's kind of vice versa. It looks at us with all our actions in online and our actions in the car by cameras and whatnot. But it's at the same time, it goes both ways. From us to grow that trust level of the AI system, and maybe not 100%, but at least to an acceptable limit. It's going to take time. I think it goes it's a bidirectional decision making over a period of time. Mm-hmm. Because I hate when I go to my Instagram page or Facebook page, and I see kind of the same type of feedback or news that comes up that I have maybe looked at once when they decided to say that this is the only thing that he's interested in. So my page is always cars. But that's not the case. I see cars maybe once or twice, but I want to see other things. But AI makes that decision for me and just feeds me with just cars, and it's just really frustrating sometimes. So I go intentionally to teach them. So I delete to what I've seen in search or in the previous, if there's a history that I can correct. That option, probably over a period of time, for a long period of time, if the learning the process is always on, I think that kind of a feedback going back and forth needs to basically be there for it to be at acceptable level of trust.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Ted?
Yeah. There's a bunch of things to say. I mean, first of all, that conversation that you were alluding to, Mr. Choi, is the thing. The problem is that if, as recently happened, one of my brothers said something awful to me, it will stay with me for a long time. So we can ruin the trust in a moment. And so it's not just building it up slowly. It's about not making certain egregious mistakes as well. And part of that is that conversation that we were talking about. What does the AI know it is competent enough to say something about? Certainly requiring the tie recommender to figure out that maybe I need a hat because actually the outfit doesn't go with a tie and my head gets cold in the winter is probably outside the realm. But if I ask for tie advice, for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's challenging my goal, and that's a problem. But I want to go back to this dashboard for a second. There was a big, gigantic improvement in dashboards in simplifying them when we went from the oil meter to a light. When we went to an idiot light, what happened is people noticed that there was something wrong with their oil. And so what we have to think about is what is the appropriate feedback that will simplify the problem space and simplify the decisions for the user, because the user has to be part of the equation. It isn't. However smart our AI is, it has to reduce what it's saying to what it knows it can be reliable about, and that's about testing the AI before we ever give it to a person, which these collaborative filters you're talking about aren't. And second, what is the feedback that a person's going to be able to respond to appropriately?
Jody?
Yes, I was going to just say that we try to conceive of AI as a design material, much like paper or wood or clay, understanding its limitations and its abilities. And I think in some of these examples that we have been talking about, there may be a misunderstanding of how the AI works. And if we start maybe with a simple, robust AI, designers might be able to convey how that works to the user of the product or the interface. And I think that's maybe something to think about. I would go on to venture that there are not a lot of places, a lot of apps or consumer facing products where AI is being used in a really elegant way. I mean, for example, Starbucks app, which is one of my favorite to pick on, should know that a customer is in a store wanting to order a drink. But the customer has to click through 4 to 5 screens to get the action accomplished. And the pay for correcting that error would just be one click. We could just put the user on the pay tab when they come in the store. If it's wrong, it's one click to get away. So this is a really simple example of how a little bit of well-developed, robust AI could help. And yet people who are designing these apps can't even think about this yet. So how can they think about the scenarios that Mr. Choi and Ted have been talking about? It's just really hard to conceive. It's beyond human factors. It's beyond interface design because it's not understood as a design material yet.
Yeah, I kind of have the same thing. Like we mentioned, but like you said, in the automotive interior, you just the action that you want is very simple. If I just say volume up, just louder, and you just go. I don't need to see all the menus and use the buttons to pull up the volume. I just want a very short commands, and then just kind of automatically does what it's supposed to do. But yet, we are making 16, 17 menu depths of menus over and over again, which is very frustrating.
Yeah. So if we take one step back, we can consider this as maybe another step of digital technology. So here's a question from James. James is asking Professor Jody. You mentioned that we have to now move beyond the design thinking, but do you think there's enough agreement or understanding of digital technology to start to think what is the next already?
I don't, thank you for your question, James. I don't think there's enough understanding, and I also think that the technology will migrate. So just to draw a comparison, when HTML first came, people wrote their own HTML, and now, fast forward a few decades, and there are entire meta design systems that enable you to, design a website in a templated format. Perhaps aspects of AI will be the same way, in that they will be black box, they will be simple things that people can adopt and develop. I mean, things can really be changing. So yes, I think we need more, but exactly what and how that unfolds, I'm not really sure.
So the next question is to the panel. Thank you, Judy. The question is, isn't time to start designing from what is relevant instead of what is possible now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what I want to see happen in the interior of automotive experience. Just because it's possible, we're just making the system very heavy. The original intent is not for that. I mean, it's to have a very intuitive, very natural interaction with the machine, with a good level of trust. I think and it's a challenge for us. I mean, obviously, to be able to how to make an intuitive system that matters to the consumer. We want to, and even from hardware, as I mentioned in the presentation briefly, we think that the choice of a certain user experience and function and feature should be given to the consumer. The consumer can, and just a kind of a vision, but they can choose what display they want to use, if at all, and then be able to kind of curate their technology in what they want in the vehicle, and then be able to load it in a position that they want. And then just kind of work very lean, just keep what they actually use and don't use, and get rid of all the stuff that they don't use. I hope that's well, the future of the more intelligent vehicles, that staying relevant to what the consumers really want and need, and just shed all the rest.
So I want to respond to that. That there was a movement in the 80s for customization in computers, and it became a disaster, because if you aren't a professional designer and you're taking a lot of time to design things, but you don't know much about it, you can make mistakes like there's no oil meter that knows that the engine's going to blow up. And so the question of relevance becomes one of course, this fluidity and this reactiveness that you're dreaming of is really exciting. But I would like our talks to be deeply describing how do we evaluate these things. I think the designers are asked to make something that's dramatic and beautiful. And of course, they can make things that shimmer and all of that. The question is, especially for a car, what is going to make the person get to where they want to better, interact with the people that are in the car with them better, and achieve the goals that they have, while protecting the people outside and themselves as well. And those things take serious evaluation. But the thing that's missing, I think, that Jody may have brought up, is this whole future thing, which is this. We think, oh, we're going to ask people what they want. Well, people want what they know about, and how do we invent? How do we really create the hunger for what's relevant in the future, not what is only possible? I love that distinction very much.
Mm-hmm.
Jody, do you have any comments related to this? Yeah. VP Choi, I would like to ask. The key question is, how can we actually, of course we know if we want to design, as a designer, we want to design something, to satisfy the needs of these users. But the key question is, how can we explore what the real needs or potential needs from the users? I remember during the certain period, I remember one just before Steve Jobs announced the iPad, Hitachi did an investigation in Japan. They had the idea about this kind of size, as touch screen devices, and they asked everybody. That was in Japanese market, did the investigation, and most of the people, they said, no, we don't need it. We have smartphones, we have laptop computers. You ask them, they can't imagine. They say, why we need these kind of devices? But when Steve Jobs announced iPads, this boom, it's become really popular in the market. How this is happening? How do you see? How do we know the potential? The needs from the users.
Well,
Go ahead.
Jody?
Well, I think Steve Jobs was a design visionary and clearly had a unique vision of what people would want and need. I think that we need to consider designing things in other ways than starting with scenarios and personas. We may need to start with a technological capability, or we may need to start with data to understand where the opportunities are, and then pivot to a group that needs those technological opportunities. So I think part of the change in design is to move beyond user-centered design to think about data-driven design that's framed by enabling technologies, et cetera.
Yeah, in this case, we all know the basic investigation approach, to gather the user's opinion. But now we have AI, right, who is very smart, got a lot of data and can analyze for us. Dr. David is asking, how can designers convey what AI knows? Do you think what the AI knows, this information can help designers to predict and to analyze, to figure out what is the potential needs of users?
So I go back to what Jody just said, which is that basically the AI, us understanding what it knows is critical to us using it to design. But I also think that designing where we used to look at the user, I think I really like to look to psychology. I like to look at what is our memory capabilities, what are our perceptual capabilities, what are our social capabilities, what are our behavioral capabilities and reactions, and how do we work as humans? Because unless we are building things to work with people, they're not going to. It's not going to work out, and we're going to overload them, or we're going to distract them, or we're going to just piss them off, and they're going to not go for it. And so, we used to look at users using this before. We aren't looking at horses to design cars anymore. We're looking at what is possible is so dramatically different now, and that we really have to look at the human possibility and the technical possibility, and then start understanding what that conversation that when it's actually when we've actually built it is another part of it, which is that is it customization, or is it even just learning about the how do I work with a system that I don't understand very well? And let me tell you, the first time I used autonomous driving in a Tesla, and I was using it to go onto a freeway, I don't know if any of you guys have done this, but basically it knows nothing about getting on a freeway. It knows a lot about and you find yourself in a very, very dangerous position where basically it wants to fly off the road. And so that conversation of what is this capable of, and helping people tamp down their expectations to reality, and helping the AI tamp down its expectations to not be thinking it knows what kind of information CHOI wants to devour. We've known for decades that collaborative filtering doesn't work, right? And we still deploy it.
Yeah, indeed. What user needs is one thing. What Jody mentioned is the social benefits. It's from the social perspective. And here's our audience. Favosis ask a tricky question related to COVID-19. And he mentioned, based on the lesson of COVID-19, do you think the future designers need a paradigm shift, from the social perspective, in design education and in design collaboration? Jody, what do you think?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, based on the lessons of COVID-19, do you think the future designers need a paradigm shift in design education or in design collaboration?
Well, that's a very slippery question. We could break it apart and say when there are unexplained or unprecedented phenomena, what is best to address them? We may not know, or we may know. And then there's how can design even evolve to address those things? I think that if we look at the pandemic as an example, there's certainly much that science could do. There are things that design could do to maybe help buffer or prepare society or help society to mitigate the pandemic or work with it in a way. But I really I'm not sure what is meant by a paradigm shift in the question.
Well, I guess I could make a little couple comments. First of all, of course, there's always paradigm shifts with new technologies. And this is a very strange experience where somehow or other the video and bandwidth capabilities of the world have held up, so that we have a very different experience than anyone had in Spanish flu time or any other time where they tried to quarantine. And so we are actually able to do all sorts of amazing things. When we're over with it, are we going to have the Roaring Twenties like they like they had after the Spanish flu, or are we going to instead of jumping out and running around like we'd like to, are we going to be so used to these new techniques for communicating that we don't have to commute 25 minutes just to talk to somebody, and we don't have to enter their office and show them that we have a broken arm or whatever it is that takes time to get started up. And we have much more fluid, much more quick, much more, actually, in some ways, almost too intimate of conversations as you're staring at my eyes the whole conversation that we're having with each other.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't think that there will be a design, education paradigm shift is necessary. But in our case, I mean, I work at a tech company, but the irony is that the tech company has the most conservative, strongest security in working online and digital data due to safety reasons, data safety reasons. So not a paradigm shift in design education due to COVID, but I think there is definitely an opportunity because of the situation, we ended up using much more online collaboration tools such as what we're using right now. It used to be blocked. So I think it just forces us to think differently, and there's definitely some benefit and opportunity that we can identify from there. I mean, obviously it's a tragic situation for globally, but there's always something that we learn from the experience. I think that's beneficial for not just designers, but for everybody.
Great, thank you. Here is another question from David asking VP CHOI, how do you envision explanations of decisions made by machine learning in the vehicle being shown in the dashboard, especially safety critical ones?
Sorry, I couldn't quite understand the question. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, it's a good point. Me neither. So Dr. David is asking CHOI, how do you envision explanations of decisions being made by machine learning in vehicle being shown in the dashboard, especially safety-related issues?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a trust question about the information that's shown on the digital cockpit. Obviously, that's also in automotive world, the safety rules are very, very strict. As I mentioned, for company to company, there's a little difference in a level of safety. Just 1 second, my battery is about to die. Just 1 second.
So I'm thinking about ABS brakes as he's leaning down. ABS brakes were a problem for when they first came out because people didn't understand how to use them, and so they actually had more accidents. And what you have now is ABS brakes that give the feedback through the pedal itself. So the pedal shakes and tells you I'm in an ABS mode. And I think that the more that we take the control surfaces and the things that we're interacting with to give the feedback that is appropriate to the person relative to the things that they imagine they are controlling, the more we're going to make connection with them and they're going to be able to understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's just because it's digital and because it's an AI, the decision making and the trust to the information we get from the vehicle is any different from what it is today. It's still a mechanical and electric signals that give us today's warning lights and things like that. So I don't think it's unique to digital cockpit, but more of a the vehicle actually. I mean, but the standard of the safety factors that engineering and development are set per OEM through their strategy.
Great, thank you. we come back to the ethical issue we discussed before. Here is a very interesting question. Marty asks, is the creation of desire in users also a deeply ethical issue? My understanding of the question is about how about the user's needs has ethical issues, and whether design, how we're going to deal with this as a designer. Ted, what do you think?
Well, certainly policy has intruded and tried to make sure that people aren't, driving without hands-free. Of course, and if you're watching a movie in a car, that's distracting, they know. The problem is that actually a lot of the studies have shown that what you think can be as distracting as anything that you're looking at or doing. And so the ethical the questions become very complex when what we really have to do is we have to make the people recognize that they're in a dangerous situation, and them having to take the decisions and have the appropriate thoughts that relative to the situation makes them appropriately taking care of themselves, the people around them, and the equipment that they're working.
Great. Jody, what do you think?
I had a thought and it went out of my head. I'm sorry, it's getting very late here, so I can come back to it.
Yeah, I totally understand. It's probably 10 or 11 o'clock in the U.S. time, right? So from another perspective, this is about the new users' needs, about the materials for design, and what VP Choi mentioned. I think here's a question related to in the corporate scenario. I know there are requirements for high efficiency of outcomes. It's you have to build up these solutions in a really fast pace. And at the same time, the fast changing of technology, which requires somewhat a kind of learning curve. So I wonder, do you see the opportunity to develop AI as a tools or like a platform to support the team collaborations and feedback cycles from your working experience?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, we not only with internally, but we've also had the experiences and still have continuing experience with our OEM customers and how to make this whole process and efficiency improvement. So making a collaboration platforms and tools have been attempted. The challenge is to it's not easy because so many different criteria is. I guess in a corporate environment, obviously we want efficiency, and to create efficiency, we have to go through a lot of internal corporate hurdles. I think to a certain, and that there's the irony. I think it's for an outside innovation small company can make a very quick platform tool that seems to easily connect the dots. But in a heavy bureaucratic corporate environment, it's actually an additional challenge to make it work. Within the company, and you can kind of imagine it that with it, and even within the company, but if you imagine another company, and for a company like us, we have to deal with all the OEMs around the world, and they all have different criteria and different rules. So setting up a functioning collaboration tool is very difficult. We've tried a few, and still in search of improving that process. So that's one of the things that I mentioned in the presentation, that how to make that flow, a process, a pipeline into a more lean one. I think it's a big design challenge, something that the designers need to kind of actively try and develop their own. But as not as a company's kind of to build a platform, it's not very easy. We're trying. We want to, and I think that's the right direction. Obviously, we have some ways to go to make that happen. And all the prototyping tools and collaboration tools, the icons that I mentioned, we are oftentimes very frustrated about, because each one of them end up being good at certain tasks and not sufficient in this task, and those characteristics are always kind of becoming an obstacle of actually not using it in the end. So finding a perfect mix seems to be very different, but from designers, individual designers' point of view, to kind of a search for and then build up the best case pipeline, the workflow and the processes. Maybe I hope to someday we will be able to have a more of a lean system that can utilize the AI to our advantage.
Very interesting. So following this design tools conversation, in Ted's presentation, I also learned Ted mentioned machine learning allows a designer to consider like dozens of parameters, right? Which is instead of like bowling things. And how do you picture the opportunities for designers in this developing such tools, Ted?
Well, I mean, what I was recently making AR glasses, and we were trying to stabilize something about them. And instead of, using the standard engineering tools, we threw AI at it after spending 6 months trying to fiddle with a bunch of parameters. So, in AI, you can take 30 parameters, 100 parameters, and throw them into the mix and have it quantify the relationship between them. It's astonishing how complex. This is what automated tabulating machines are all about, right? It's about simulating things that you couldn't simulate in your head. And that's really one of the big things that's wonderful about the AI models. I wanted to make a little comment about the last topic as well, which is that my view is that whatever we're doing with a computer, whatever we're doing with other people already has been this way. And whatever we're doing with a tool that we're picking up, it's a progressive relationship. And this idea of a progressive relationship means, something about this trust that we were talking about earlier. That is, you build up your skills, the tool shows more of its abilities through you understanding more about it, and you build up your skills and you keep going. And if you don't do it in a manner that is smooth, you might just fall off and throw the thing away because you cut your finger with your knife, and you don't want to cut your finger with your knife at any point. You want the knife to keep being something that's useful as you learn more and more and start depending on it more and more. So that's kind of a criteria for collaboration in my view.
Yeah, totally agree. In the human culture, we build up trust through a long time, but you lose trust just probably 1 second.
Very easily.
Yeah, very easily. So now,
But actually, if I could just say something, a lot of
Please.
studies show that when people's trust of technology fails, for whatever reason the technology fails, a lot of times the trust comes back in an even more heightened fashion. So, human behavior is also unpredictable.
totally. It's now. I'm not wearing a tie today. So
Abuse of computers might engender deeper relationships. Huh?
exactly. Okay. So before you go, we actually have prepared what we call word cloud. Could you please show the word clouds, and which is articulating the keywords and you have presented and we have discussed today. So we can see the biggest words here are design, AI, us, which is human, people, needs, relationship, understanding. I believe understanding is between human, AI, and the system. Work, needs, keep changing, yeah. How do you want me to change this? It's horrible interface, which one do you want me aim at? Okay, so anything else? We have mentioned trust. Here we go. Future, needs, tools, company, which means industry requirements and corporate scenario, etc. Okay, So I think it's time for everyone. And here, I really want to appreciate everybody's contribution, Jody, Ted, and VP Choi. And it was great to have you. Before you go, the final question just come up to VP Choi. Do you hire recently graduated designers? If you do, what type of skills do you expect them to have?
Not in my, well, our studio actually did hire 12 new designers today. So they were very lucky to have found a job in this COVID situation. But the unique thing was that it was an online internship process, not through the application review process and portfolio process, but actually we went through. Very proud actually to give them an experiential project together, and through guidance and coaching, and the 12 of them excelled at it, and we actually after the internship became a direct hire for us. So I was very happy to hear that, and they were very happy. Today actually they're introducing themselves online and by WebEx. And what kind of a strange life at times that we live in. I'm looking for the designer. Obviously, the design talent is important as well. But as I mentioned, I look for inquisitiveness, the kind of search, kind of a brave, curious ones with passion. In corporate world, unfortunately, I see too many losing passion over time, and especially in a large organization like us. Over time, that passion, whether it's because of the organization or not, I don't know, but we look for that inquisitiveness, the willing to change, willing to accept, and willing to try new things, not just designing, but understanding, challenging the process, learning how to change the process, and being able to suggest and make opinion. I think that's very lacking unfortunately, in my experience recently. So I have a very it's personal bias a little bit, but I want that inquisitive, more passionate designers to be around me.
Great, thank you. Jody and Ted, do you want to give a final sentence comments to the audience today?
Always be exploring, always be trying, and don't be frightened of new technologies. They're always coming, but try to understand what they're valuable for, and how you can learn from them, as well as what you can use them for.
And I would just echo what both of you said, and to say that, technology can be looked at as a design material. Our value is in being innovative, in pivoting, and in looking for new and passionate and creative ways to do things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for all the audiences staying with us for so long. So that's the end of the morning session. We'll be back at 1:30 p.m. In the afternoon session. We will have Dr. Joseph Francis Wang from the Hong Kong Design Institute and the Institute of Vocational Education as our moderator. We also have amazing speakers in the afternoon. They are Dr. Zhang Pan Huang, Senior Vice Director from SenseTime, Dr. Ling Yun Sun, Professor and Deputy Dean from Zhejiang University, and Professor Ashley Ho, Professor of Design Innovation from the Royal College of Art, UK. So stay tuned. I'm Professor Stephen Jia Wang, School of Design, Hong Kong PolyU, and bye for now. Thank you.